In the northern coast of Spain, where the Atlantic wind hits the stone streets of Pontevedra, a quiet revolution was being born, not in the halls of power, but in the mind of a young woman who believed the world could be more just, more equal, and more humane. Her name is Ángela Rodríguez Pam. Today, she's one of the boldest voices in Spain's feminist and political landscape. But her story is not one of instant fame. It's the story of a woman who carved her space in history with courage, conviction, and an unwavering commitment to those who are too often ignored. Women, LGBTQ+ people, survivors of abuse, and the working class. This is her story. Ángela Rodríguez was born in 1989 in Pontevedra, a historical city in the Galicia region of Spain. She grew up surrounded by culture, community, and the challenges of everyday life in a part of Spain often overlooked by national politics. Galicia is known for its resilience, its proud traditions, and its social consciousness. It was here that Ángela's political instincts began to take root. She was not the type to accept things simply because they've always been that way. From a young age, Ángela questioned everything. Why were women treated differently? Why was violence against women normalized in so many corners of society? Why were queer lives so often erased or ridiculed? These weren't rhetorical questions. For Ángela, they were a call to action. Her education took her into the world of philosophy. She studied at the University of Santiago de Compostela, where she dove deep into political thought, feminist theory, ethics, and the structure of power itself. Philosophy didn't just give her answers, it gave her better questions, and with each question came a deeper sense of urgency. It wasn't long before she became involved in activism. She didn't wait to be elected or recognized. She began in the streets marching, organizing, educating, and agitating for change. She stood with feminist collectives, student unions, and workers' movements. She understood something critical, that real change starts below, long before it reaches the top. Then came 2014. Spain was on the edge of political transformation. Disillusionment with the traditional parties was growing. The economic crisis had left scars. People were hungry for a new voice, one that wasn't bought by elites or silenced by fear. That voice came in the form of Podemos, a new left-wing party born from the streets, the universities, and the protests. Ángela joined early on. Her political ideas were no longer just dreams, they had found a platform. She quickly became one of the most recognized feminist voices within the party. She wasn't a background figure. She was at the forefront, speaking truth in debates, calling out hypocrisy, and defending rights that were always under threat. Abortion, trans inclusion, sex education, gender violence prevention. In 2015, at just 26 years old, Ángela Rodríguez entered Spain's Congress of Deputies, becoming one of the youngest members of Parliament. She wasn't there to blend in. She came with a purpose to shake the system and amplify the voices of those left out of power for far too long. Inside the Congress, her impact was immediate. She stood up for feminist policies in a room that was still overwhelmingly male and conservative. She spoke fearlessly about issues many politicians avoided, from menstrual poverty to sexual consent, from inclusive language to legal protections for trans and non-binary people. But politics, especially for women with bold convictions, is not kind. She faced ridicule from the far right. She was attacked in the media, trolled online, and insulted in Parliament. Her body, her voice, her words, everything about her was scrutinized, but she never gave them the satisfaction of silence. She kept going. Then, in 2021, her political career reached a new level. She was appointed Secretary of State for Equality and against gender violence in Spain's progressive coalition government. It was a historic moment. Now, she had not just a voice, she had the tools to implement real, systemic change. Her first mission, to build upon Spain's already groundbreaking gender violence laws and make them more inclusive. She worked to expand the definition of gender-based violence to recognize the unique experiences of trans women, queer people, migrant women, and disabled survivors. She led efforts to pass a law recognizing consent as the key factor in sexual violence cases, a legal change inspired by the rallying cry, "Solo CEC, only yes means yes." That law was not just about legal language. It was about affirming bodily autonomy. It was about shifting the culture of silence, shame, and disbelief that survivors had endured for decades. But progress never comes without conflict. The Solo CEC law became the center of national controversy. Some court rulings reduced sentences for convicted offenders, claiming technicalities in how the law was written. The media exploded. Opposition parties demanded resignations. Angela once again stood her ground. She admitted where improvements were needed, but she refused to back away from the bigger truth, that this law was a necessary step toward recognizing women's voices and centering consent in the legal system. She said openly that justice cannot only serve those in suits and ties. It must serve the girls, the migrants, the women in shelters, the silenced survivors. Her voice was clear. Her mission remained. Over the next year, Angela continued to lead with a radical kind of transparency. She spoke publicly about menstrual equity, calling for free period products in schools and public institutions. She addressed the need to eliminate tampon taxes. She made menstrual poverty a political issue, no longer something hidden in shame. In one viral press conference, she said, "The state has a duty to recognize that periods are not a luxury, they are a public health matter." That moment changed the national conversation. Angela also pushed to protect the rights of trans and non-binary people. At a time when transphobia was rising across Europe, she insisted that feminism must be intersectional, that the fight for women's rights is incomplete without including those marginalized by gender identity, class, race, or ability. This wasn't easy. Even within progressive circles, her bold stances drew criticism, but she was never here to play politics as usual. She was here to reshape it. She also made headlines by being unapologetically herself. Unlike traditional politicians, she didn't hide behind suits or scripted sound bites. She tweeted openly, joked online, responded to trolls, and remained active in grassroots feminist spaces. For some, this made her unprofessional. But for millions of others, especially young women, she was refreshingly real. They saw in her a version of themselves, passionate, flawed, bold, and unafraid to speak truth to power. She became a symbol of what it looks like to lead without losing your soul. Beyond laws and speeches, Ángela Rodríguez Pam embodies a bigger story. She represents a new generation of women in politics, one that refuses to wait for permission. A generation that isn't afraid to be loud, emotional, feminist, or angry. A generation that knows change is not only possible, it is urgent. Her leadership continues to influence national and international conversations about gender equality. She has spoken at global conferences, engaged with UN agencies, and inspired feminist movements beyond Spain's border. And yet, she remains deeply rooted in her local community in Galicia, always returning, always grounded. She reminds us that political power doesn't have to mean personal disconnection, that you can be in government and still stand shoulder to shoulder with people in the streets. In a world filled with political posturing, Angela offers something rare, authenticity. She laughs, she cries, she swears, she admits mistakes, she listens, she learns, she teaches, and above all, she never forgets who she's fighting for. Her story is far from over, but already she has reshaped the political landscape in Spain. She has pushed feminism from the margins to the mainstream. She has dared to imagine a country where every person, regardless of gender, class, or identity is treated with dignity. Her legacy is not built on speeches or photos, it's built on lives changed, on laws passed, on silences broken. Ángela Rodríguez Pam is not just a politician. She is a movement, a fighter, a feminist, a builder of a world we are still learning how to deserve. And as long as there is injustice, as long as women are not safe, as long as someone's silence is mistaken for consent, her voice will rise, not as a whisper, but as a revolution.